welcome to Comic Books and You. Today we're going to go over City Boy, which is a brand new series and character from DC, which came out for the AAPI Heritage Month push, basically, with Spirit World and the other one. I can't remember its name right now. Both of the other two I really wasn't interested in. While this one looked fun from the get-go, and I had seen it in a previous work, actually, even though it's a brand new character, a brand new story. This is not where this character was introduced, and we'll see that in a moment. Here we've got the 3 standard covers, the ones that you could easily acquire. There's 2 at 1 in 25 and a 1 in 50 that are, crazy expensive if you want to get them. The best one of the 3, in my opinion, is really the standard cover, which we have on the left here. It's very straightforward. You see the character in his actual costume. That's what he's going to be wearing for the whole thing. In his environment, the city. So it actually represents well the character, represents well what's going on. It's somewhat intriguing. It's not the best cover in existence, but it would attract the eye of someone trying to get into this. The middle cover is a pin-up cover, mostly for women, I would say. You've got that K-pop band icon in the middle. That's what it looks like to me. I am not a huge K-pop fan personally, so this doesn't affect me at all. It's not an awful cover either, but I would have preferred him to have his jacket on rather than off like this. It would have looked a little bit better. All the way to the right, we've got the AAPI Heritage Month cover, which is inspired. I'll go with that. It's not great and wouldn't drive me to buy this book, seeing it like that. If the City Boy was actually written in Korean characters, maybe, but not written like this. It's missing something to sell the book to me with this. This is a new hero altogether. This is not a mental passing. This is not a recreation of something else. He does borrow a lot from a previous Wildstorm character, and that's why this character was introduced in Wildstorm 20th Anniversary Special. But he is not just a copy or an evolution of an existing character. Unfortunately, I don't like how the marketing was done for it. It's a brand new Korean hero. Okay, so what? Cameron is Korean, yes, but it's really ancillary. It's not relevant to his character. It doesn't affect what he is, what he does, or whatever. He's just a human living in Metropolis, more or less. And we learn through the book that he doesn't even really speak Korean. So is he really a Korean hero? Not really. He's just a hero that happens to be Korean. The good thing, however, this character didn't turn me off right away. It's not like Spirit World where you look at the cover and you're like, well, there's the dyke haircut we always see everywhere, and you just give up on it. Just so you know, as we're going through this, my camera is still acting up. There was an update on Android and it messed up my camera and the color grading on it. It's picking up light and all sorts of things a lot more than it did. I need to either get another camera software or figure out the settings on it, and I'm really not that great. And I am not going to poach art online other than covers because sometimes I just don't have those covers. But in this case, it's not something that I'm going to do. I'm not going to use the DC Online app or whatever. I'm supporting physical media personally. Let's go through our characters. So Cameron Kim is City Boy, who's a Korean American who's living on the streets of Metropolis. He was abandoned by his mother when he was a young child, given up to his grandfather. That's what we see. We don't have any more details on why this happened, how this happened, etc. Also, no father in the picture, which is somewhat weird for Asian characters or Korean characters, but it's definitely not uncommon for DC or new modern characters, obviously. He gains his power to talk to the city and control it, partially, through an experiment slash religious ceremony gone bad, and he's accidentally given those powers. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the starts of many Shin Megami Tensei games, which is actually a good thing. because those games are very interesting and story-wise have very good elements. He seems to have a good art, like any good hero, but he falls into that reluctant hero category, which I find overdone nowadays. Reluctant heroes work as an archetype, but we've seen so much of it lately that it gets annoying. It just gets repeated. Next character we see through most of the story is Fujimoto, who's an homeless Japanese man who starts following Cameron around when he realizes that Kim has some ability to find money and find valuables. He's destitute, but he does appear to be a nice person overall. But probably like almost all the homeless in that neighborhood, he's being racketed and bullied by the Mooncut clan, which is a criminal gang that's running the neighborhood. Leader of said gang is Boss Chung. So he's a gang leader in Metropolis. He's ruthless, ready to kill to achieve his objective. Honestly, he could have been replaced with any other gang boss from any ethnicity, any backgrounds, and it wouldn't have made much of a difference. As far as a character goes, he's basically a roadblock or a trigger. He resorts to violence way too quickly, which would make him a pretty bad mob boss overall. A good mob boss, especially in comics, would be one of those mob boss which uses violence as the last resort and to show just how awful things can get. The story starts with child abandonment, which is always a great way to start a story. It's very motivating. Cameron is dropped off by his grandfather, by his mother, and she just leaves. We have no more details other than that. We skip over to the present day, and Cameron is walking around in one of the wealthier neighborhoods of Metropolis, and he meets up with Fujimoto, who's begging on the street. Both of them kind of get chased off by the cops, but Fujimoto attaches himself to Cameron because he knows he has some kind of ability to find money. Obviously, right after Cameron does find a bit of cash, and the two of them decide to go grab a meal, but they're caught up by Boss Chung, who asks for his cut from Fujimoto and tells Cameron that he works for him now. Things are degenerating a little bit. Cameron is rather mad at the situation and goes into his hideout, which is basically the lower story or the basement of a abandoned building, it seems. And we get a flashback to when he got his power in one weird science experiment mixed with a ritual. The ritual starts as the scientist slash priest invited a bunch of important city officials and important city people, city engineers and such. And the power from the machine flies out and basically kills all those important people. And the power itself transfers itself over to Cameron. They capture him and start experimenting on him. We go back to the present, and Cameron decides that it's time to bail out of there. Give Fujimoto some cash before telling him to leave him alone. He goes around town, grabs a bunch of valuable, using his power from listening to the city, and goes and pawns them off. Overall, at this point, what we know from Cameron's power is mainly that he uses them to find valuable around town, listening to what the city's telling him, where they are, using some type of map that he can see. And he's got the ability to alter the city a little bit as well. We saw him move some bricks and things around. We have not seen any major ability usage from him. Cameron goes back to his hideout, but at that point he's caught up by Chung's thugs and Chung himself, and they've beaten up Fujimoto to try to learn where Cameron is. Cameron tries to save him, gives Chung all the money he basically got for the day, but it's not enough. Cameron tries to run away, and at that point, Boss Chung kills Fujimoto. This makes Cameron rather mad, and we see a better display of his powers, where he basically warps the entire room, bounces people around, and knocks them out. But as he is doing that, we see a boss from Intergang show up and reporting to Darkseid that they found the person with the power they were looking for. So we get A bit of an introduction on the characters. It's really good that it is 100% focused on Cameron. We don't have 16 different characters rolling around, and all the ancillary characters are just there to allow the story to move forward. We don't have a full explanation of his power or a full range of what his powers are going to be. I do enjoy the fact that what we see from his powers, they're used for his own survival mostly, and more as a support thing than as a full on combat thing. Of course, this is probably going to change, but this is an interesting start to the story. Paratext wise, if we look at the entire book, it's a very standard run of the mill DC book. Standardish normal number of ads, number of pages, standard paper quality. For a brand new character, maybe I would have expected a little bit more. We still get that eulogy for Rachel Polak in this book. It worked well in Doom Patrol because she worked on that particular book series. Here, I'm not sure what it's doing there other than to fill page count. I really like how vibrant the colors are in the book. The characters in the background pop out as you look at them. I'm not a huge fan of the flashbacks having a bluish hue over everything, but that bluish hue is also the hue they use to whenever they're showing Cameron's power. Here we see Cameron using his power for the first time, really, during that mad scientist experiment. Seems to be doing quite a bit of damage. Not terrible for the flashbacks, but I really like it everywhere else, and it does pop out even here. The red jacket, everything, it still works. Do get a big Pride ad in the middle to 2023 DC Pride. I'm not paying $12 for that book. The art quality on what we have here is not what I would expect. I don't like the messaging. I don't like any of those characters. So that's really bad. And Tim Drake is not bisexual. For God's sake. This is the dumbest thing they've done recently. Pride Month will be awful this year. I'm honestly scared as to what we're going to get in comics as far as ads and stuff, but that's how it goes. Artistic merit. Art here is pretty good overall. It's not super high top tier. It's not, early 1990s Liefeld, Jim Lee, Graham Nolan kind of stuff. But it's very good for what it is as digital art goes. And it's actually better than what I would expect from a new franchise, because on a new franchise, I would expect new artists, new people. The quality I would not want it to be, bottom tier, but I would expect it to be maybe a little bit lower than what we see here. We don't have a whole lot of action scenes though in this. So we do have to be worried about that. We haven't seen what they can do as far as action scenes go. Cameron's costume is interesting, easily identifiable, practical, so it's a good costume overall. Easy to replicate if you want to cosplay. That's actually a weakness, in my opinion. That's something DC and Marvel has been doing with a lot of their new characters, trying to give them a simpler costume for tourists, basically, to replicate. The real cosplayers, they want complex costumes or difficult things to do because that's part of the art of what they're doing. I'm not opposed, though, to Cameron's costume here. It works fine. The mask, jacket with a city basically painted on it, cargo pants, it works, okay? It's practical and can be modified if required. Facial expressions here are normally pretty good, but we don't get a whole lot of faces. A lot of times they're in, or creative placement is used to limit how much facial work is needed. It's going to work, and hopefully over time we might see an improvement on there. The panel work is functional, practical, nothing exceptional or nothing that I would say moves the needle in a particular way or revolutionizes things, but it's also not distracting either by being too simple or too complex. I will take Minkyu Jung art over a lot of people working at DC right now. Same with a lot of people working at Image. It's a very functional style, and it will evolve over time, I am sure, if he or she keeps working in this particular environment. Story elements. Well, there isn't too terribly much to talk about, but there are a few things that I find a bit weird or I find a bit nice at the same time. I am tired of characters being abandoned by their mother or abandoned, period. It worked for Superman, kind of works for Shazam. Over time, it gets tiresome, something that we're used to seeing all the time. And I'm really, really tired of not seeing a dad. Father figures are absent in modern media, and this is a case where, I mean, why isn't the dad there? Find it really, really weird. There's very little feminine energy in this book, though. If you look at it, the only speaking role for a woman is the horrible mother of Cameron. And she has, what, two speech bubbles, I think? Everything else, well, it's pure male energy, male Asian energy to be precise. Bit weird in modern comics, but also like the police, even though the main characters are homeless, they're not represented as horrible people. They're just represented as the police. I mean, part of the police job is to tell the various vagrants to move when they're in certain locations where they're not wanted or needed. This is actually refreshing compared to a lot of books we have from all sorts of publisher. I mean, when we're at the point where we say like, yeah, the police are not complete assholes, and that's a good thing, we've reached a certain point in history in that is very annoying. The machine ritual that gives Cameron his power is a cool concept. Like I said, it kind of reminds me of Shin Megami Tensei, which is something that I really like. It's different, and it's not just a case of, well, it's magic, I ain't gonna explain shit. There's, of course, magical elements to it and things like that, but there's some form of background, and if you read through all the bubbles, you have a feeling as to how the city connects with Cameron. Another thing I find a little bit weird, however, is the inclusion of Darkseid at the end. He's way too big of a threat for a brand new hero that's really street level. I mean, you can't be more street level than Cameron Kim right now. Including Darkseid directly is a big, it really scares me. I think that's the best way for me to say it here. I'm kind of scared of where this is going to go. The flashback with the origin of Cameron's power are good, but I realize why ISOM number one didn't give us the full origin of the powers of the hero right away. I honestly would have preferred to see Cameron use his powers in a variety of ways, see how he controls it, how he can talk to the city, how the city talks to him, how he finds things more in details before we see how he gets them, and would have given us more of an impact and more of an understanding of, okay, that's why and that's how it all works. This is an origin story issue, so the pacing is different from what we normally see or the kind of standard we normally have. We see Cameron use his power to scavenge rather than to fight or do anything like that, so we see that he's a bit more reserved in that way. I'm mostly fine with that kind of pacing for an origin story issue, but this is a 6-issue limited series. If this was ongoing, wasting 1/6 of your runtime as an origin story wouldn't have been as bad. Here we're basically spending a sixth of your runtime to tell us who that character is and where he comes from, rather than telling us what he's currently doing. City Boy will live or die by the sales of those books. And unfortunately, this first book doesn't have a super strong hook to it. I could see people buying the book and being like, well, this is okay. And being like, yeah, I'll maybe buy the next one, or yeah, I'll buy the next one and just forget when the next issue comes out. So this could be a problem for this book. I do find that this is an interesting new character. This is a cool concept and a cool background for a character. I mean, it's something that's slightly different than a lot of Asian heroes we've already seen, but the marketing for this is rather terrible. Legendary Asian heroes, they're brand new characters. They're not legendary Asian heroes. They're just new characters that happen to be Asian. And It's not that I don't appreciate Asian characters, but in this case, they are. It's just an ancillary thing that they are Asian. Creating comic books for the 13 up market always seems weird to me. Comic books should be normally targeted to the 7 to 77 crowd. The young readers who are able to understand complex sentences, all the way to grandpa. Anybody should be able to pick up a standard comic book. I'm not talking Peacemaker here, I'm not talking Spawn, any of the more mature titles, but a title like this, which should be for mass consumption, should be targeted to that 7 to 77 crowd, not for 13 up, PG 13, or however you want to say it. I'm tired of the abandoned kid narrative. It's overused, but at least here it explains why Cameron's on the street. I guess he has an abandonment issues and would rather be roaming around rather than staying with a grandfather. We really don't have much of his family history outside of that. And as I was saying here, Darkseid is not a good villain to include in this. It's a new character. It needs space to breathe. It needs to have its own little thing going on for a little while. And then if you put him in a larger event or if you actually get a full series order, then you start putting in those big boy characters. So I hope you enjoyed this analysis and review. I will talk to you guys later. Keep on reading comics, keep on enjoying them. I'll keep analyzing them, and I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.